I am Doomsvince, and this is day 43 of Spawn Year.
I've taken my jacket off and moved it as far away from me as I can. I really wish this graveyard was bigger. After the jacket started fighting me yesterday, Doomsvince was all too willing to explain the situation. Like Spawn's cloak, my jacket is a living being. It feeds on darkness, and thus has had no difficulty surviving here. It isn't bonded to me like Spawn's costume, but we need each other all the same. It's far more comfortable being worn by someone, and without it, I get a little chilly in this graveyard. Apparently, the jacket sleeps 42 days at a time. It hibernates and is immune to its one weakness while dormant. I'm sure this jacket is another clever creation of Doomsvince, as that's all too convenient, and he obviously lined up this creature's sleep pattern with an appropriate Spawn story, so that while Spawn is fighting his own clothes, so too am I. And naturally, that weakness the jacket is only affected by while awake that causes it uncontrollable convulsions and pain is Spawn comics. Or Spawn anything, I'd wager. Well, it might have been created to make my task of reviewing Spawn for an entire year that much more difficult, but at least it isn't an altogether unsympathetic creature. Well, I made it through 2 weeks of writing in my own blood, and this too shall pass. In this issue, Spawn tries the same thing I have. He takes his costume off with incredible pain and difficulty, as it's a symbiotic creature that needs Al to live, and vice versa, judging by the dreams he continues to have where Letha beckons to him, telling him he buried not just her, but a part of himself as well. Moore takes Al from a guy who complains about everything to a guy who really has something immediate and horrifying to complain about, and then instead of spending all his time sulking and hiding, he concentrates on trying to protect himself and get rid of his costume, which is responsible for so much bloodshed. With everyone coming after him, he turns to the last person he thinks he can trust, and so it's odd we've never heard of him before now, Jacob Groenfeld, an old CIA contact of Al's and an arms dealer. Spawn just assumes the guns he misplaced a few issues back were stolen and sold to Groenfeld, and he was right, so he goes to Jacob to retrieve them. That's a pretty broad assumption, Spawn. You don't think someone in the roughest area of town might find free military-grade weapons and ammunition and just keep them to protect themselves? Unfortunately, the supernatural crimes expert introduced last issue, Sansker, has already gotten to Jacob, and he, with much regret, turns on Al and alerts them to his presence there. Then Al is attacked by a wild, raging Sansker himself, wearing an insane grin and a long, fierce yellow mane. Turns out Sansker is, as I might have expected, a supernatural, or is it extra normal, monster who kills monsters. Moore may have an interesting plan for this, but at first glance, I was a little disappointed, as it seems somewhat obvious. I like the idea that someone comes to town calling Spawn a menace, and Spawn has to come to terms with the nature of his new life and identity. Try as he might to do good, he really seems to have actually been a menace, and lately the costume he can't control is apparently eviscerating people. Making Sansker another maniac villain, I think, diminishes that. Though I do like that Sansker is faster and stronger than Spawn, taking pride in actually being more terrifying and, to him, better than Spawn, and savoring the fear he can cause in Spawn himself. So I'm conflicted. I may completely come around on Moore's choice for Sansker by the end. When Spawn finally manages to rid himself of his costume and bury it in a box in the ocean, we see that after all this time, he still hasn't healed that huge hole in his chest. Just imagine how many of those toys where you toss balls through Spawn's middle could have been sold between Spawn 27 and now. At the end, Spawn sadly finds he really has no friends left, and nowhere to go when even his friends in the alley turn on him, staking him in the heart while he's asleep after buying into Sansker's hype about Spawn being a vampire. This is gripping stuff, but I'd probably be more riveted at this development if I hadn't seen that gaping hole in his chest only a couple pages earlier. Spawn's bleeding necroplasm everywhere, and that stake should have gone through air. He's missing the portion of his body earlier in the issue where wood is sticking through in the last panel. I'm really enjoying Tony Daniel and Kevin Conrad's art in this mini, though they're doing that 90s image thing of avoiding backgrounds, but they dropped the ball a little there. Moore's really got my attention with this story, with the nature of Spawn's symbiotic costume and his attempt at fighting the evil of it, a conflict that represents his larger battle of holding on to his humanity while fighting hell itself. So far, my jacket is staying on its side of the graveyard, but it has its cuffs pointed toward me as if examining my every move. I can tell that even at a distance, it doesn't like its proximity to these Spawn comics. I don't know if it can get close enough to destroy any of them without permanent damage to itself, but the way it writhed around them yesterday when it first woke up, I imagine long, close exposure might kill it. I'm going to keep my eye on it, because tomorrow, when Blood Feud number 3 comes out of that open grave, if the jacket gets to it before I do, I might just be going in. Signed, Captain Logan.